Everybody, welcome back to another episode of my Dialing In series and continuing on again with more in the firmware 3.15 new features. Today I'm looking at the Ampeg Opto Comp. Anybody who watches my channel knows that I'm a huge fan of using compressors, oftentimes in a very subtle way, and this compressor is going to be very interesting for that. I pretty much always use the LA Studio Comp, which is another optical compressor, at the end of my chain. So I was very intrigued to hear how this one worked. Now, like I oftentimes like to do when we get new models, is go and look at the manuals or the websites of the original product that's being modeled, so we can get a pretty good idea of what the original design was trying to accomplish. And in that way, that usually spills over into allowing us to understand how to use the new model that we've received. So let's do just that. So here we are over in the Ampeg Opto Comp manual. So we're going to scroll down, take a look at it. There's the original pedal, compression, release, and output level, one input, one output. And in the introduction, they describe it. They say the Ampeg Opto Comp analog optical compressor pedal utilizes an optical circuit to deliver smooth vintage-style compression to add headroom and sustain to your guitar or bass. Dial in a fast, subtle style to control peaks or crank up the compression to add a unique character, featuring a roadworthy all-metal chassis, which we don't have to worry about. Ours is digital version, so let's move on down. The features, they're really accenting that this delivers smooth vintage-style compression. Kind of my favorite type. It says dial in the perfect sound with compression and release control. So let's check out what those actually do. Something is going to be very interesting here. If we look at what they describe the compression control as, it says a compressor squeezes the dynamic range of a signal, reducing the volume of loud notes, which allows the overall volume to be boosted. It can really balance out very dynamic playing styles. Using a slight amount of compression can beef up your tone a bit. You can also get a punchier sound using compression. Now that's just a description of how the compressor can affect our tone. But this says rotate the compression knob, also known as the ratio control. Now this is where it seems to be an error in the manual. It says to adjust the overall amount of compression applied to a signal. Rotating the compression knob is going to adjust the overall amount of compression, but this is where, from my discussion with the folks at line 6, this is what's incorrect even in the Ampeg Opto Comp manual. And I'm just going with what I've been told. It says the ratio ranges from a minimum of 1:1 fully counterclockwise to a maximum of 10:1 fully clockwise, landing at 3:1 at the center position. Now, this is what was also originally stated in the line 6 release notes, but they've recently corrected it to what seems to be the correct function of the compress control, and it says controls how much level the compressor detector circuit receives. More level equals more compression. Ampeg Opto Comp has a fixed threshold and ratio, so it doesn't control the ratio, but more controls how much level is hitting the compressor detector circuit, therefore increasing the amount of compression or gain reduction we're going to get, or decreasing it. If we come back over to the release, it says the release knob may also be thought of as a time control knob, as it determines how long it takes for the compressor to end gain reduction. The release time ranges from a minimum of 75 milliseconds fully counterclockwise to a maximum of 600 milliseconds fully clockwise. So that's really great information to have to understand what we have going on here. Now, you'll notice also we have a mix control in our Helix version of this, and that will allow us to be able to mix in our drive signal. If we take this down to 0, we get no compression. It's going to just be direct signal, and this will be no direct signal, and all it will be is the process signal from the compressor. This is going to be very useful, especially on a compressor like this, where we may not have as much control over the attack time and the threshold. So you'll notice I also have a version over here at the end. It's shut off right now because I want to kind of focus on this at the beginning of the chain. If I shut this off, this is the tone that I have to start with using the line 6 Von 2 amp model. All right, so nice little tone. Come over here and we will just call up the Ampeg Opto Comp on its default settings that it comes up with. So doing what a compressor does, right? So as we know, this would be a release probably, over here is 600 milliseconds, over here is 75 milliseconds. I don't know, maybe 100, 150 milliseconds here. Now the mix control is very interesting because I could take that really squash sound, bring it back 50-50 and do kind of a blended New York style compression. I really like to blend in a little of the direct signal a lot of times when I'm using compression. And a setting on here around 75 is kind of interesting. We turn it off altogether. Almost beefs the sound up a bit, controls those dynamics a bit, and you can blend in that direct signal to taste. So let's look at some of the extremes on this. If we bring the release right down, you can kind of hear with the longer release that it takes longer for that compression to go away. Let's keep it on a lower release. We'll bring that compressor down all the way. We would have to balance the before and after levels on those to really hear what it's doing. It shouldn't really be adding much in the way of compression, and I noticed by my gain reduction meters, it isn't, but it still seems to do something to the tone. Kind of fattens it in a really nice way. Definitely a bit of a different feel to it. Let's blend that all the way up now to 10. Have to bring in some makeup gain there. It's kind of nice even at these extreme settings. It really does something nice to it, and it doesn't have a lot of the negative qualities I hear in a lot of pedal style compressors where they just kind of get out of control almost. This is kind of nice. So, you know, settings on here that I think I would like is that release down at 0. You might notice why I'm looking down at my Helix 4. I'm looking at my gain reduction meters. If it's set there for about 2 dB or so of gain reduction, and then maybe pull this back to 75%. Trying to get those levels matched really close so that we can actually hear the difference of what the compressor is doing and not just some sort of volume difference. Now, one thing you can do as well is you could take something like this with mild compression settings, crank the levels so it hits the front end of the amp harder and actually breaks it up more like a boost would do. Obviously, we have a volume jump. We have a very much cleaner sound here. We hear how it breaks the amp up much more, and that can be a really cool effect too. So less as a compressor and more as a boost with a bit of compression to kind of alter the feel. Now, I think we could also use this at the end of the chain. Let's bring in some of this new Heliosphere delay. Maybe not quite so much. With some reverb on here from the dynamic room as well. And I'll turn this on with some subtle settings at the end here as well. Kind of using it as I would the LA Studio Comp. Now, what I've done here is I have the compressor set so that it's barely working. I'm getting maybe half a dB to 1 dB of gain reduction and the mix pulled back to 75%, just to add a little bit of glue to the sound, even though it's after the time-based effects like the reverb and the delay. Keep in mind the compressor I have first in the chain is now turned off, so all you're hearing is this last one here. I really like the qualities that this brings to the table. Let's take out the delay. And again, in this form, I'm using the compressor in an extremely subtle way. I'm barely getting less than a dB of gain reduction. So it's very subtle, but it adds a nice glue to it. We could even, if you find that too much, bring this back to 50% on the mix. All right, what do you guys think? I am really impressed with that as far as a stomp box style compressor goes. That's probably one of the best ones I've heard in a long time. And I think that's a really great addition to our Helix and our HX Stomp, and something that I'm going to get quite a bit of use out of. I hope that helps you to understand how it works and gives you some ideas on how you can implement it into your presets. Thanks so much for tuning in again. Please like the video, share it with anybody who you think would get some use out of watching it. Also, please subscribe to my channel, hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content. I'll be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.